Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and in this episode, I want to highlight the importance of research on any creative project that you tackle. Now, before I fully get into it, though, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So let's talk about this. Whenever you have a bout of inspiration, you want to jump on it, right? Get going. And that's great. That is the sort of inertia that pushes projects along. However, whenever we have an idea at its initial form, it's going to be cliche ridden, right? It just is. That's not a knock on you. It's not a question of your talent. I don't care if you're Ernest Hemingway and so forth. In fact, Hemingway is famous for, being an advocate of revisions for this very reason. But that initial idea is riddled with cliches. And the only way to rid that idea of cliches is to start working on it and revise it. And the thing that often gets overlooked as part of that revision process and that crafting process is research. Part of it is nonfiction research, right? Seeing actual real world data about whatever it is that you're working on and studying it through that perspective. I don't care if you're a musician that wants to do jazz. You got to understand, jazz from a cultural perspective, right? And the other side of it is, sometimes people have this notion that they want their idea to be untainted, and if they consume, yes, my dog Chloe agrees. If they consume creative works, rather than be inspired by them, it'll just seep too much into it, and they want to be uninfluenced by other stuff, right? So, research comes from both the nonfiction side, meaning the data and analysis, but also consuming works of art similar to what you want to create. And, for me, I think it's a fallacy to think that ultimately you're going to be overly influenced by anything. That shouldn't be the case. But for me, whenever I see or observe something, one of the cool parts is the idea that I have is actually different than this. So it's okay, because in the end, how many love songs can there be? Well, infinitely, right? Because the way someone executes something is different, right? Each one of us as artists, the way we would approach something now versus 5 years from now is going to be different. So, we ourselves are going to create some different art just from that standpoint. But we need to consume, that research to know that stuff, to rid ourselves of the cliches, to be able to fill out the world, to have all the most pertinent information, right? And I think because the idea of allowing it to be untainted and just in its pure form, that doesn't work. There's a reason why Stephen King says those who don't read cannot write. Because reading, what he's really saying is the reading is part of that research. You have to, and it's both research as what's out there, and just even from sentence structure, grammar, and so forth, right? And learning more words and all that stuff. There's just such a huge benefit to in taking all that stuff in. Which is why, for me as a filmmaker and storyteller, in general, and podcaster, I guess, the things that I love, I just integrate it into my day. I love going to movies. I love watching TV. I love reading books. I love listening to podcasts. And so it's just part of my natural thing. And, sometimes there's a conscious effort in terms of like, okay, if I'm going to be working on X, Y, and Z movie, like here's the intent of it. Let me look up, for example, when I went out and filmed a movie in Colombia, my second feature film, I had read fiction books from and about Colombia. I read nonfiction stuff about Colombia. I watched vlogs about Colombia. I watched documentaries. I watched movies about and from Colombia. Also, that way I can really immerse myself in this and tell as honest a story as I could, right? And that's how we create depth in the work that we do, and I think, because another fallacy is like, oh, well, I'll just write about my own experience. And it's like, as someone who's tried to do that, right, my first novel is a coming-of-age story set in Slovakia, inspired by events of me spending my summers in Slovakia, right, and taking the various experiences that I had and fictionalizing them. And what you quickly learn is that when you kind of start that, it's not as good as you thought. And so what ended up, I would say about 20% of the book is actual, stuff that relates to my actual life, and the rest of it is made up, fictionalized and dramatized, specifically because, I needed to tell a story that wouldn't be boring, right? And part of that, how that happens, is through this research, right? It can't, when you just purely draw from experience, for me, it doesn't work. And so that's why I'm harping on research. And I said, research can take on multiple forms. It could take on movies, books, vlogs, articles, music, paintings, all kinds of art, right? That is the research, but really take it in and make it integrated, make it part of your process rather than just like, I have to research. That's how you elevate your art. And that's the lesson that I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, you can comment down below with any thoughts or questions of your own. If you like what I'm doing and would like to support me and also get something in return, then consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/PhilSvitek. There are various tiers of support and various rewards for the level of contribution. It just allows a more direct way for us to interact if that's something that you would like. Also, I've made mention of some of the art that I've created, whether it's movies, my nonfiction book, Master Mental Fortitude, my coming-of-age book, Elan, all that stuff is available to you, and I encourage you to check them out. You can go to philsvitek.com/products on where to purchase those, or direct links are also in the description as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate you and hope to see you next time.